Since February 24, 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, the U.S. government has been a staunch supporter of Ukraine's war effort. The Biden administration has repeatedly prepared emergency spending packages to support Ukraine's government and military. This fund has reached $113 billion so far. But opinion polls show that Americans' support for Ukraine was waning even before the Israeli attack on Hamas on October 7, 2023, and the subsequent Israel-Hamas war drew international attention from Ukraine. Political scientist Jessica Trisko Darden, author Aiding and Abetting U.S. Foreign Aid and State Violence, explains how recent efforts by Republican-controlled House of Representatives to withhold aid to Ukraine reflect perception that United States is spending too much money on U.S. southern border, a move against Ukraine at expense other domestic priorities, such as improving security. How much aid has the United States provided Ukraine so far? So far, the United States has approved nearly $113 billion in aid to Ukraine through 4 additional emergency appropriations, a way to request funds outside the normal budget process. Most of this aid was for military purposes. The more than $62.3 billion in military aid provided includes at least $23.5 billion worth of U.S. weapons from the Department of Defense. In comparison, approximately $3 billion was spent on humanitarian aid. Advocates of increased U.S. aid have pointed out that most of the military aid to Ukraine actually supports the U.S. defense industry. These advocates also argue that the war in Ukraine has damaged Russia's military assets and that the current approach is much cheaper than confronting an expansionist Russia. But critics argue that the unprecedented amount of U.S. aid to Ukraine has depleted U.S. military stockpiles and potentially reduced readiness. Others have called for additional oversight to help Ukraine. Given the country's history of government corruption, what aid is the Biden administration currently requesting for Ukraine? The current request before the House includes $105 billion in security assistance for Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan and the U.S. southern border, with more than $61 billion in packages for Ukraine. In comparison, $6.4 billion is requested for U.S. border operations. This package is separate from defense appropriations bill passed by the Senate on Deck 13 and House on Deck 14, which includes $600 million in military aid Ukraine and funding create a special inspector general oversee Ukraine. The bill awaits President Joe Biden's signature. The vote on the special funding request was initially delayed due to the impeachment of former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, but current House Speaker Mike Johnson did little to advance the vote despite Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy meeting with Biden and members of Congress in Washington, D.C., in December 2023 to plead for more aid. What is the reason for the current obstruction in Congress? House Republican L.